Gaming Bolt presents 15 games that were graphically way ahead of their time, Commenters Edition. Pretty recently, we did a video on games that were, at the time of their release, visual marvels, games that stood head and shoulders above their peers in terms of their technical achievements. You can take a look at that video through the link in the description below. Predictably, many of you weren't happy with our picks. Come on people, a top 15 can only have 15 games. And a lot of you left a lot of great suggestions in the comments, so here's part 2 of that feature. Here, we're going to take a look at even more games that were way ahead of their time, graphically speaking, based on both suggestions by you in the comments of our previous feature and some games that we were reminded of on our own. If history has taught us anything, it's that there are still going to be quite a lot of games that you're going to want to see in this list but are not going to make the cut. So if you have any suggestions, leave them in the comments. Who knows, maybe we'll make a part 3. As always, keep in mind that this list is in random order. Anyway, let's get right to it. The Last of Us. Naughty Dog are absolute masters when it comes to making visual beasts. Starting with the first Uncharted in 2007, Naughty Dog triggered a string of one technical marvel after another, and The Last of Us was their crowning achievement on the PS3. Side note, the PS4 remaster looks even more stunning. The Last of Us was crammed full of detail in typical Naughty Dog fashion with amazing lighting, wonderfully rendered environments, stunning character models, and thanks to the studio's amazing motion capture work, some of the best animated and best acted cutscenes that you'll ever see in any video game. Half-Life 2. Half-Life 2 is a seminal game, a benchmark achievement in the industry for a plethora of reasons. One of those reasons is the fact that it was an absolutely beautiful game. Today, you might look back at the game and you wouldn't think it's remarkable, with the benefit of hindsight, but back when it was first released, by industry standards, it looked almost photorealistic. From the incredible facial animations, to how the environments were just crammed full of detail, to how more or less the entire game reacted to its incredible physics. Half-Life 2's technical achievements were truly commendable. Gears of War. Back at the beginning of what is known as the HD generation, there were some games that paved the way for everything that came after them, and Gears of War was definitely one of those. For now, let's put aside the fact that this game spawned literally an entire genre of shooters. Gears was an incredible achievement. Sure, like most games of that generation, Gears of War's visual palette was dominated by an overbearing blanket of brown, but the level of detail we saw in that game was, for that time, unprecedented. Assassin's Creed Unity. Assassin's Creed Unity is, without the shadow of a doubt, the blackest sheep in the Assassin's Creed family, but there were some things it did wonderfully well. The visuals were absolutely stunning. The art managed to recreate the French Revolution setting with great aplomb, and the game's technical side worked wonders with that art, bringing it to life in an incredible fashion. It's true that the game and its visuals suffered greatly because of a bevy of glaring glitches and bugs, many of which were unforgivably bad, but once Unity was patched, it stood as one of the best looking games of its year. Max Payne 2, The Fall of Max Payne. Max Payne 2 was an incredibly memorable experience in more ways than one of them being its amazing visuals. For its time, it looked marvelous. Things such as reflections and shadows are taken for granted in today's day and age, but Max Payne 2 put them to use brilliantly. Its incredible lighting and effects made the game's dream sequences visual wonders, while triggering bullet time and seeing all those bullets rippling through the air in slow motion was truly a sight to behold. Red Dead Redemption. Just like Naughty Dog, every game that comes out of Rockstar is a technical achievement that stands out in memory for a long time to come, and Red Dead Redemption knocked the wind out of us with just how beautiful of a game that it was. It recreated every inch of its ambitious and vast Wild West setting with stunning grace. It's a game that looks amazing even today, 8 years on since its release, and with its 4K upgrade on the Xbox One, it looks even better. We can only imagine what wonders Rockstar will work with the upcoming sequel. Far Cry. Any game that's made by Crytek, or at least was back in their glory days, is almost guaranteed to have excellent graphics, and the very first Far Cry game was no different. Even today, 14 years from its launch, the game still looks great. Its lush tropical environments are beautifully rendered, while the water looks just incredible. And we all know how important good-looking water is in a video game. Sure, you can look back at some of its visual details, like the facial models for instance, and plainly see that they just don't hold up all that well anymore, but back in its day, Far Cry was an absolute looker. Doom. Doom's achievements when it first launched on PCs back in 1993 seemed almost impossible to achieve. What John Carmack and id Software achieved with their seminal first-person shooter was nothing short of miraculous, outputting 3D visuals, or 3D tricks at the very least, in an age when even what is today cursory stuff was impossible to achieve. The technical tools the game used to deploy these impressive visuals were in no vague terms absolutely genius. Most of the stuff we take for granted in today's first-person shooters, and really in games in general, was pioneered by Doom. If nothing else, that should give you an idea of just how ahead of its time that game was. Gran Turismo 4. Gran Turismo is yet another series that somehow always manages to push the envelope visually speaking with every successive release, and Gran Turismo 4 was no different. What makes it even more impressive is that it was on the PS2, a system that was the weakest of the bunch of that generation, barring the Dreamcast. And yet, Gran Turismo 4 still managed to look better than a vast majority of the games that came years after it. Environments, car models, tracks, you name it, every single thing in the game looked like it was crafted with painstaking detail. LA Noire. LA Noire's feats on the visual front need no introduction. Its open world and everything that was in it were recreated with amazing detail. But while that's all well and good, it was the character models, more specifically their faces and facial animations, that stole the show. Motion capture and facial capture were technologies that were still finding their feet in the video game industry back when LA Noire came out, barring Naughty Dog's efforts, and the surprisingly detailed facial animations in LA Noire blew everyone away. Sure, by today's standards, we can look back at some of that and laugh at how overly exaggerated many of those animations were, but hindsight is a powerful, and in many cases inconvenient thing. Uncharted 4: A Thief's End. The Last of Us led us to firmly believe that Naughty Dog's game's visual accomplishments couldn't get any more pronounced. Uncharted 4 came out and giddily proved us very, very wrong. Uncharted 4 is without the shadow of a doubt one of the best looking games ever, and not just on consoles. The level of detail in this game is absolutely ridiculous. The individual grains of sand pouring out of the bullet holes in bags of sand is still amazing to look at. The animations of the characters are better than they've ever been, while every single environment in the game is rendered with painstaking detail. It's truly an amazing achievement, and if anything, it makes us even more excited about what Naughty Dog will be able to accomplish in The Last of Us Part 2. Grand Theft Auto 4. In and around 2008 was a time when the HD era of gaming was really coming into its own, with games like Metal Gear Solid 4 and Uncharted 2 in 2009. 2008's Grand Theft Auto 4 was another such game. With GTA 4's visual fidelity, Rockstar blew everyone away. Liberty City was a wonderfully realized setting, thanks to amazing technical feats and immense attention to detail. In the rain, the city's streets and surfaces glistened with moisture. The foliage in and around the city looked amazing. The vehicles were built really well. When you consider that on top of all of that this was a huge open world game with not a great number of bugs and glitches to speak of, you can't help but marvel at the continued excellence that Rockstar's games consistently show. QUAKE. After having already raised the graphical Wolfenstein 3D and Doom, id Software proved that they still had it in them for the third time running with QUAKE. While QUAKE is most often remembered for popularizing multiplayer shooters on PC, and even beyond in general, what's often forgotten is that the game was also a graphical beast. The QUAKE engine used by id Software allowed for graphical effects far ahead of what literally any other game offered at the time. It was so staggeringly advanced that modern games such as Titanfall and Call of Duty still use a variant of the QUAKE engine to this day, with Valve's venerated Source engine also being a fork of the QUAKE engine. Detroit: Become Human. Sony's first-party games are almost expected to have best-in-class visuals at this point, but even so, Detroit: Become Human looked better than anyone could have hoped. The game has incredible lighting, amazing facial animations, and just an all-around level of sheen and polish that you usually don't see in a lot of other titles. David Cage and his team at Quantic Dreams have been known for creating visually stunning games for a long time now. But even so, they managed to outdo themselves with Detroit. Metro 2033. The Metro series has always been known for producing top-notch visuals, and all that started obviously with the very first game in the series. On a PC, on ultra-high settings, Metro 2033 was truly a sight to behold. Not that it didn't look excellent even under ordinary circumstances, mind you. Its bleak, post-apocalyptic environments were brought to life excellently, and the entire game was crammed with detail. The fact that the game went for a minimalist HUD to play on these strengths and also to enhance its atmosphere only served to make it even more visually impressive.
And that about does it for this video. If you enjoyed what you watched and want to see more from Gaming Bolt, you can always hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell icon next to it. That way you will never miss any of our videos.